Godzilla gets Mechagodzilla from 2002, the 26th Godzilla movie in the franchise, the 4th Godzilla movie in the Millennium Series. Again, the same cliches and repeats. This is not a follow-up sequel to the previous Godzilla Millennium movies. At this point in time, there is no continuity in the Millennium Series. It's once again a follow-up sequel to the original Godzilla from 1954, ignoring the other Godzilla sequels. This is the second time they rebooted Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla from 1974 and 1993. It was directed by Masaki Tezuka, again, I'm not sure I'm saying his name right, who prior to this directed Godzilla vs. Megaguirus. Not only is it a sequel to the original Godzilla movie, it's also a sequel to the original 1961 Mothra movie. They show brief flashback clips of that movie, and it's also in continuity with War of the Gargantuous. Despite no follow-up continuity, this movie has similarity to character arcs from Godzilla vs. Megaguirus. There's this military girl named Mikani who wants revenge on Godzilla because of her friends that were killed by Godzilla. Is it just me or am I watching the same movie? We already saw this. They might as well should have brought back the same character from Godzilla vs. Megaguirus. She's a cliche character who doesn't have friends, or not much of a conversationalist. She's a rebel. Also, she feels guilt, grief over the loss of her friend's accident. Some people forgive her mistake, and some blame and pick on her for the accident. I don't understand why then I bring back that character from Godzilla vs. Megaguirus. Doesn't make any sense. But despite that, the same actress from Godzilla vs. Megaguirus, Miko Tanaka, is in this movie, but as a different character. She plays a nurse for only a small, brief cameo. If they brought that character back, this movie could have been a follow-up sequel to Godzilla vs. Megaguirus. She's an alright sympathetic character, strong but very vulnerable. When she's training, working out, I'm thinking, Rocky training montage. The only missing was her climbing a mountain shouting, Godzilla! Like in Rocky IV, when Rocky climbs the mountains of Russia, screams, Drago! The father and daughter relationship bond is okay. It's sweet and cute, but again, it's cliched. It's not complex or strong like in GMK. Just like Kudo Megaguirus hitting on the female soldier, Professor Yahara tries way too hard flirting with Akane, and it's very weird and awkward. And just like in Megaguirus, Akane bonds with a little girl. The movie has a lot of past previous Godzilla actors, like for example, the actor who played Professor Yahara was in Return of Godzilla in 1984. Kumi Masami is in this movie in two of the Godzilla Showa movies, Invasion of the Astro Monsters and Ibra Horror the Deep. She plays a Japanese prime minister, then she ends up resigning. She's replaced by the character Hayato Igarashi, played by Kira Nako, who was in the Godzilla Heisei movies as Commander Aso. Takehiro Murata was in Godzilla vs. Mothra, Godzilla vs. Destroyer, Godzilla 2000 Millennium GMK. He only has a brief cameo in this movie. Professor Yahara is one of the scientists who was working on building Mechagodzilla, or Kiryu as they call him in this movie. There was a scene where the little girl Sarah sees her dad bring the original Godzilla back to life, and she feels sad that Godzilla was brought back, and yet not her mother. Well, here's a short explanation behind that. Her dad should have let her read the book Frankenstein, learn why it's not a good idea to play God, despite her dad just played God, making Mechagodzilla from the old Godzilla bones from the first movie. The look of Mechagodzilla is definitely a better upgrade than the last one from 1993's Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla. Not only is Godzilla fighting Mechagodzilla, he's semi-fighting the original Godzilla from the first movie in robot form. Here's an idea. Toho could have done an old Godzilla versus the new Godzilla. This concept is an original good idea where Godzilla fights the soul of the old Godzilla, Mechagodzilla, but not done as well as I had hoped for. As I said in my Godzilla Heisei Series Part 2 video, they originally wanted to make Godzilla vs. Ghost Godzilla. I guess they used that idea and premise for this movie, but don't give it true justice. Mechagodzilla is made from the original bones of the first Godzilla from 1954. It might have been the first time we've seen the original Godzilla bones from the first movie. In the first movie, he was killed by the Oxygen Destroyer. What doesn't make any sense, why do they call Mechagodzilla Kiryu in this movie? It makes no sense. Is that a nickname or did I miss something? It's like the same thing as like hypertension means the same thing as high blood pressure, but a different terminology. It also implied that Mechagodzilla has a soul despite he's a robot. When he's attacking the buildings, they hint that he might possibly remember his past. But they don't really go far with this. Not like how in RoboCop when Murphy remembers who he was as a human being before he was killed and programmed to be RoboCop. That's a good example of a human soul remember who he was in his past before he became a robot. Godzilla's not the main focus in this movie. This movie focuses more on Kiryu. When Godzilla disappears, the way one of the commanders and officers in charge says Godzilla disappears sounds like he said, Godzilla sucks dick, as James Rolfe said in his Godzilla-thon Monster Madness series. But that line sounds like something out of a porn movie. As you know, I said before in my previous videos, I'm going to say it again, I'm a huge diehard baseball fan. Future New York Yankees All-Star World Series champion Hideki Matsui appears in this movie for a cameo. When he shot his cameo in this movie, he was not in the Yankees yet. He was still playing for the Yomiuri Giants Japanese baseball team. He's teaching little kids how to hit a baseball. Once he spots Godzilla, he makes sure all the kids get to safety. Good for you, Hideki Matsui. You're the man. It makes sense for him to have a cameo in this Godzilla movie, because that was his nickname as a baseball player. Before I got into Godzilla movies until now, this is my Godzilla growing up as a fan of the New York Yankees. It has cool fight scenes between Godzilla and Mechagodzilla fighting each other, probably the best ever. It's funny when Mechagodzilla swings Godzilla like a cowboy robe. This looks like something out of the Showa era series. Just like Space Godzilla, Akane makes peace with Godzilla and understanding that Godzilla was not all that bad, and having a different perspective on Godzilla. This one is okay, it's not great or perfect, just nothing special or original. It doesn't do anything different I haven't seen done before already in previous Godzilla movies. It's just sad they could not top what they did with the last movie in GMK. It had interesting ideas, but did not go far deep as it could have.
So, Godzilla against Mechagodzilla. This one, it's technically good. Like, there's nothing wrong with this movie. Like, technically speaking, it is a good, well-made Godzilla movie. The issue is, it's such a standard run-of-the-mill Godzilla film, and that's somewhat disappointing, especially coming right after GMK, which was such a fresh and unique take on this mythos. Like, this one really feels like a return to form, but it's not bad, and the main protagonist is a very likable character. Honestly, one of the most likable protagonists in a Godzilla movie, I think. And this one is, because I know this was made by the same people who made Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla, and this almost feels like a loose remake of Mechagodzilla, but it's better than Mechagodzilla. But yeah, Godzilla against Mechagodzilla, it's a good one. Not a great one, but it's solid.
Godzilla Tokyo S.O.S. from 2003, the 27th Godzilla movie in the franchise, the 5th Godzilla movie in the Millenium Series, a follow-up sequel to Godzilla against Mechagodzilla, the only follow-up sequel in the Millennium Godzilla series. It's also a follow-up sequel to the first Mothra movie. One of the characters from the first Mothra movie comes back, Professor Chujo. I'm not sure I'm saying that name right. I apologize once again. Again, I never saw the first Mothra movie, so don't comment on that yet. But this actor has been in a lot of Godzilla movies, playing different various characters. His nephew Yushi was an okay character, was kind of a jerk sometimes. He's in a mechanic who works on Mechagodzilla. We see how he develops a special bond with Kiryu. He's not bad, he's just a bland, forgetful character, nothing special. There's really not much to him. When he argues with one of the pilots, it felt like it reminded me of something out of Top Gun. When Yushi saved by the pilot he had beef with early in the movie, I was joking, "You are still dangerous, Maverick, but you can be my wingman anytime. Bullshit, you can be mine." The character Aki from the last Godzilla movie is the only recurring character from Godzilla against Mechagodzilla. I wish she was in the movie more, the main focus in this movie. She took a backseat in this movie. At least her character is a little more interesting in the last movie compared to this character, Yushi. It's a little confusing, it does not make any sense on why Mothra cares about Godzilla's bones that were used in the new Mechagodzilla. It had themes of not bringing something back from the dead, how humans are not perfect, and that we should learn from our mistakes. The movie as usual has cool fight scenes that are very action-packed, badass, epic, extreme, and high on testosterone. Yeah! It also has cool visuals of Godzilla destroying buildings. It's also not a Godzilla movie when you see Mothra squirting webs at Godzilla in a fight. Mothra really takes a beating from Godzilla. Like in previous Godzilla and Mothra fights, after when Mothra dies, a new one is born. this time twin Mothras. It was also interesting how Mechagodzilla could control himself when the sun rises. In the last movie they hinted he had a soul. In this movie they confirm it. He just wants to rest in peace. There's a giant turtle that was found dead on the beach. He was killed by Godzilla in this movie. And no, it's not Gamera, that's what you're thinking. The giant turtle is from another Toho movie called Space Amoeba. It's not a great movie. This one was just okay for me. With some cool giant monster fight scenes. That was the highlight, best part for me. Not that I'm saying I hated this more than the last one. They were like mediocre movies that were just made for a paycheck. It doesn't do anything different. It's not mind-blowing or groundbreaking, these last two Godzilla movies, the Millennium Series.
So, Godzilla Tokyo S.O.S. acts as a direct sequel to Godzilla against Mechagodzilla, making these the only two films in the Millennium Series to have any real continuity with each other. And again, this one's about the same thing with against Mechagodzilla. Technically speaking, it's a good, well-made Godzilla movie, but for me, it doesn't really rise above being anything but just that. I do like the first one in this, little story arc better. First of all, I will say the protagonist of this one is kind of an asshat, especially compared to the protagonist of the previous film. But I like this one, and I appreciated that this also served as a direct sequel to the original Mothra movie. But yeah, overall, it's good, but not great.
Godzilla Final Wars from 2004, the 20th Godzilla movie in the Toho franchise, the last Godzilla movie in the Millennium Series. This movie came out in 2004. It was the 50th anniversary of Godzilla around that time period. This is the final Toho Godzilla movie until 2016 Toho Shin Godzilla and Gareth Edwards' American Godzilla Monsterverse series. This is not a follow-up sequel to any of the previous Godzilla Millennium Series. Continuity is thrown out the window, flushed down the toilet. At this point, Toho did not give a shit. This movie is directed by Ryuhei Kitamura. I know I'm probably not saying his name right. Once again, I apologize. This is the only movie I've seen of his so far. I'm not very familiar with his other movies he's directed, but I already directed Clive Barker's The Midnight Meat Train. The movie Versus is a well-known movie, but again, I'd never seen it. This movie is also like another semi-loose remake to Destroy All Monsters. It pays tribute to other Godzilla movies of the past, a little bit of Invasion of the Astro Monsters, but on a bigger budget. The character General Douglas Gore looks like a combo of M. Bison from Street Fighter and Mario. It's the mustache. He was badass, hilarious, and really over the top, but that was the intention. Basically, Mario was a badass action hero movie. When I was watching the Japanese cut to this movie, he was speaking English while the Japanese actors were still speaking Japanese. They didn't dub him over in Japanese in the Japanese cut, and I'm not sure why that is. When the mutant teams take action and shoot at Ibra, the giant lobster, the team leader says, "Let's eat fried shrimp tonight." That line sounds like something out of an Arnold Schwarzenegger or Sylvester Stallone 80s action movie. The action scenes feel like something out of a video game. I don't know why they're called the mutants, and I'm not sure if this is a reference to X-Men, or I could be wrong on this one, but this movie was so Matrix. As a kid in the 2000s, I never realized or it occurred to me how lots of movies reference and parody The Matrix for how it was an impact film for the time period. The alien spaceship looks like Epcot. It's a big epic crazy battle of Godzilla fighting all the monsters he fought in every movie from past, present, and current at that time. Godzilla 98 makes an appearance in this movie. The CGI is crap and no one gives a shit about Godzilla 98. It's funny and epic when Godzilla fights Zilla in Australia, swings his tail at Zilla, knocks him over the Sydney Opera House, and breathes fire at him. That's for payback for 98 Godzilla and insulting Godzilla. Also, it's where they use some kind of heavy metal hip-hop song in the background that sounds like a combination of Ramalala and Little Green Day. I know, it's a weird way to describe this song, where in reality this song is called We're All to Blame by Sum 41. I'm not familiar with this band, to be honest. Toho was basically doing this on purpose and intentional, where they were basically sending a message to TriStar Fuck you for insulting and ruining Godzilla. As I said before, the movie has a lot of Godzilla, well-known giant monsters he fought in the past, present, and future. When he fights Killmonger, squirts web at him, and then swings him like a cowboy and throws him like a frisbee. Also, the big giant mantis from Son of Godzilla has a small part in this movie. Anguirus, who was the first giant monster Godzilla fought in the sequel, Godzilla Raids Again, is in this movie for a brief cameo. Rodan makes an appearance and he attacks New York City. The Smog Monster and Ibra make small brief cameos in this movie. King Caesar, Gigan have small cameos in this movie, and we haven't seen these two since the Showa era movies. Mother helps Godzilla but gets killed. Mother doesn't have a big part in this movie. We see the Twin Fairies pop up every now and then. Godzilla fights King Ghidorah, a good fit last fight against his worst enemy and biggest ally. At first, King Ghidorah was Monster X in disguise. Godzilla's son Minya is found on Mount Fuji, but doesn't really do much. The little kid is a homage to Ichiro from Godzilla's Revenge, also known as All Monsters Attack for the Japanese cut. At first, Minya was small, then he grows into a regular giant monster size. Despite famous monster cameos Godzilla fought in the past, they don't have Orga and Mechagodzilla. I guess it was too much of an overload. Also, no Jet Jaguar cameo. Godzilla fights a new Monster X, not much personality like previous Godzilla monsters. The spaceship battle scenes look like something from Star Wars, and it also felt like Independence Day knockoff. The movie rotates back and forth between Godzilla fighting monsters and the human characters fighting the most in a Godzilla movie with the human characters. It was funny when the main character, who was the hero of this movie, Osaki, is assigned to be a bodyguard for some scientist. At first, he thought he was being a bodyguard for an older man, but once she walks in, he sees how hot she is, and yeah, I'm not gonna lie, I don't know who this actress is, but she was really beautiful. The Shinichi Ozaki character is the only mutant who does not get controlled by the aliens. Also, it was too obvious they tried to make him Neo from the Matrix movies. He's the chosen one. They referenced the bullet time scene from the Matrix. The character was the leader and control of Planet X, acts like a spoiled, over-the-top teenager. He's a whiny brat. They once again bring back some previous Godzilla veteran actors in this movie, and I guess you say there's a little bit of tribute to them. They brought back Kumi Mizumo, Akira Takarado, Kenji Saharo, Masita Abu, Akira Nako. The movie ends with Godzilla and his son walking in the ocean, and that was the end for the Godzilla Millenium Series. This is the kind of Godzilla movie you have to see it to believe it. It's not a great movie. I can see why maybe some Godzilla fans may or may not like this movie for a lot of different reasons. Yes, I'll admit, it's a messy movie, batshit crazy. Well, it was strange for me, but it was alright. Not the worst thing I've seen. I'm glad I watched this movie for the experience. It's an insane movie, the franchise. It's another Godzilla movie don't try to take too seriously because it's not supposed to be taken seriously. It was a love letter tribute to Godzilla in a weird, crazy way. It's an over-the-top movie, however you want to interpret it. Before I end this video with my final thoughts, here are my friend Christian's recording on Godzilla Final Wars.
So, Godzilla Final Wars is probably the most batshit insane film in this franchise. Like, this, you could tell this one was not even remotely taking itself seriously, and you know what? I'm fine with that. This is just, this movie is like pure, unadulterated fun. It's just an insane movie. Like, it's like you took X-Men, The Matrix, Godzilla, and all these like Hong Kong Kung Fu movies and threw them into a blender, and this is what you got. And Don Fry, who plays Captain Gordon in this, absolutely fucking steals the movie. I love the part where, like, he's fighting the female alien, and then she's like, "You wouldn't hit a woman, would you?" And he just opens up his fist, he's like, "Yeah," and just smacks the shit out of her. I love when Akira Takarada's character gets kidnapped, and then you see him and the other people who are kidnapped escape, and he just says, "We escaped somehow," and they don't explain how they escaped. It's brilliant. I love this one.
Compared to the Godzilla Heist series, that was fun, had a lot of great themes, the stories were very consistent with the continuity. The Millennium Series, I will say, it's not the worst thing. It was hit or miss for me. It definitely was one of the weakest ones with the series, with some exceptions. Like I said before, maybe because Toho fell after the Heist series, maybe they just knew they could not top that. But again, I'm not saying that's true. That's just my own personal opinion. To me, the Millennium Series, I can take it or leave it. If they had maybe followed a storyline, not an anthology, this could have maybe worked out alright, but sadly we'll never know. That wraps up Godzilla Millenium Series. Next video, Shin Godzilla. See you next time.